Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm delighted to introduce this session on the rise of the non-fungible token. What are the key considerations? I'm Muireann Bodger, a senior editor at World Intellectual Property Review, and today we are joined by Rick Farnell, Chief Executive of Appdetex, and Mark Trachtenberg, shareholder in Greenberg Traurig's IP and Tech Group. This session will address NFTs, including what they are, what brands are doing in this space, what threats they represent, and how brands can protect themselves. So hi, Rick and Mark. How are you both doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for coming along today to share your knowledge, which will take the form of a fireside chat. I'm going to duck out now, and you will see me at the end.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And just right out of the gate, just a huge thank you to WIPR for this opportunity. Really looking forward to jumping into this content. I know there's a lot of demand and interest in this subject. So jumping right in, if you do have questions as Mark and I are handling this session, please type them into the question and answer so that we can see those. We are planning to hold at least 15 minutes at the end of this for questions. So please queue up your questions for us. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined here by Mark Trachtenberg, shareholder at Greenberg in Chicago and chair of the firm's internet domain name, e-commerce and social media practice. Mark has specialized in internet-related matters and protecting and promoting brands online for over 18 years. It includes active participation in the internet governance through ICANN, where he's the chair in the membership committee of ICANN's intellectual property constituency and is counsel to the brand registry group. Over his career, Mark has recovered or taken down thousands of domain names, email addresses, social media accounts and posts, and ongoing e-commerce listings on 6 continents. As part of his practice, Mark also regularly advises clients and speaks on new technologies, including blockchain, cryptocurrency, NFTs, and in particular with respect to their relationship to brand protection and promotion, which is going to be our focus today. So, Mark, a big thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Excellent. So, and I want a huge thank you to everyone who joined today, and thank you for watching this discussion on NFTs and what IP owners really need to know. I'm confident that most of you watching have heard a lot about NFTs lately, either yourself or from your kids. For those that can relate, it feels like we're in 1999 again, trying to determine what this new thing called the internet will become, except, instead of taxi drivers back then, it's today, crypto investment tips are coming from Uber drivers. And, the community is talking about Beeple NFTs selling for millions and millions of dollars, numerous celebrities and early consumers who are buying Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs and property, Nike suing StockX, Hermes suing Meta Birkins for creating NFT images of their famous bags, Miramax suing Quentin Tarantino for selling parts of the original script of Pulp Fiction as NFTs. Maybe you bought NBA Top Shot NFTs. Either way, NFTs and the underlying technology is starting to become everywhere. We're fresh off of VCon this past week, where Gary Vaynerchuk helped the market see the future of, the utility of smart contracts, and that this is not a fad. Just like the internet was not a fad leading up to the dot-com correction. It just cleared out the gold rush mentality and the get-rich-quick motions. The important thing to focus on is really the overwhelming global consumer support for this new technology and its utility that it can provide for new ideas and new business models. So with that, Mark, before we get into maybe, some of the IP-specific and business aspects, please, if you can, for the audience, kind of explain what NFTs are and how they work.
Definitely. And I think as NFTs exist on the blockchain and they're purchased using cryptocurrency, it's really important when we're having this discussion to take a step back and to make sure that everybody understands, what the blockchain is and what cryptocurrency is. And then it'll make it a little bit clearer what NFTs are and how they work. So let's first start off with blockchain, as that's the foundation of the NFT technology. So what blockchain is is a system for securely recording information and transactions in a database that's distributed and duplicated across a network of computer systems. So blockchain is different from a traditional database. In a traditional database, which most people who are watching this are probably familiar with, all the data is stored in one centralized repository, right? That could either be a server, it's a physical server in a location somewhere, or stored online virtually, it's hosted in a virtual server. The data in that traditional database is typically structured in tables, and there's a centralized authority that dictates the truth to all of the other participants in the network. And those other participants are either users who are accessing the database or an application that's accessing that centralized database. And in that model of traditional databases, only privileged users or institutions or applications can access the entire history of transactions or confirm new transactions in that database. So now let's turn to blockchain. The blockchain database works a little bit differently. So in a blockchain database, the data is duplicated and distributed to every network or every computer on that network or every node. And that data could be related to cryptocurrency, or it could relate to contracts or ownership or any other information really. The information is structured in groups, and those groups are known as blocks that hold a sets of information. And for this reason, blockchain is often referred to as ledger or distributed ledger technology. So in blockchain, unlike a traditional database, there's no centralized authority that dictates the truth to the other participants in the network. Instead, every participant in the network, so every computer, can access the history of transactions or confirm a new transaction. And one important point here is that blockchains can be either public or private. So in a private blockchain, the network participants can access the history of transactions, but no one else outside that network can. However, in a public blockchain like Bitcoin, anyone in the world can access the history of the transactions and see every transaction that occurred on that blockchain. Another important aspect of blockchain is that the transactions on the blockchain are permanent and immutable or unchangeable. In order to hack or change the blockchain database, you would basically have to hack into every computer on the network and make the same exact change to every computer because it has an exact copy of the database. And from a practical perspective, that's pretty much cost and technically prohibitive. So it's pretty unlikely, although not impossible, depending on the blockchain, to happen. So that's the basic of what the blockchain is. How does it work? Well, the way it works is that a user of the network requests a transaction, and it's whatever transaction is permitted on that particular blockchain. That requested transaction is then broadcast to every computer on the network. The transaction, again, can involve cryptocurrency, contracts, records, or any other information, depending on the blockchain and how it's configured. Then, after the transaction has been transmitted to all the computers on the network, one or more computers validates that transaction and the user status. So typically, this is done by running through a series of complicated algorithms. However, this tends to take a lot of computing power, and these processing costs are initially borne by the computers verifying the transaction. In practice, though, these costs actually typically are reimbursed by the user of the blockchain who's engaging in that transaction. And so when you create an NFT or you buy or sell cryptocurrency, you have to pay these processing costs, which is referred to as gas. So after the transaction and the user are verified, the transaction is then combined with other verified transactions in a block. And when that block is full, it's added to the existing blockchain. So you have a chain of these blocks. So now that we understand the basics of blockchain, let's move to NFTs and cryptocurrency. NFT stands for a non-fungible token. So it's essentially the use of blockchain technology to provide public proof of ownership of the thing that the NFT is associated with. Essentially, the NFT is a digital certificate of authenticity or ownership that exists on the blockchain. Now, NFTs can be associated with pretty much anything. Oftentimes, this is something digital or virtual. For example, a digital image or photo, virtual real estate, virtual items in games or virtual worlds. But they can also be associated with things in the real world, like real property, buildings, shoes, paintings and sculptures, or other collectibles. NFTs can also be associated with more ephemeral things like the first tweet, which Jack Dorsey sold for $2.9 million, or a moment in time in an NBA Finals game, which the NBA sells in its very popular Top Shot marketplace. So here, I think, if we compare NFTs to cryptocurrency, it really highlights the differences and further clarifies what NFTs are and how they work. So cryptocurrency is the use of blockchain to administer a digital currency. Each cryptocurrency is specific to a particular blockchain. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polkadot, Dogecoin, they all exist on different blockchains. Cryptocurrency is fungible and interchangeable. One unit of cryptocurrency is no different than any other. So it's just like $1 bill is no different from any other dollar bill except for the serial number. Now for cryptocurrency, typically only the amount, transaction data, sender and receiver are stored on the blockchain because that's really all that you need. But NFTs are different. With NFTs, additional information beyond those basic data elements related to the thing that they're associated with is also stored on the blockchain. And unlike cryptocurrency, which is fungible, they're all the same, each NFT is unique and not interchangeable. But like cryptocurrency, each NFT lives on a particular blockchain, and they're purchased using that blockchain's cryptocurrency. Most NFTs right now are part of the Ethereum blockchain, but other blockchains are starting to create their own NFTs. Notably, though, even though the NFT is stored on the blockchain, for most NFTs that are associated with an image or content, the image or content is actually not stored in the NFT itself on the blockchain, but rather the NFT includes a reference to that location where the image or file is stored. Now, like cryptocurrency, NFTs are stored in a digital wallet and controlled with a private encryption key. Now, this is very important because if you lose that private encryption key, you lose access to your cryptocurrency, NFTs forever. There's no password reset for the private key, and there are many, many stories of people being locked out of their digital wallets. Just last year, it was estimated that of the 18.5 million Bitcoin, around 20%, worth about $140 billion, was lost or otherwise stranded in wallets because people lost their private encryption keys.
So, Mark, you said a lot there, and I guess for the audience, even for myself, who I'm in this world and actively participating, from wallets to minting to security, transferring, privacy, metaverse, multiverse, encryption, algorithms, gas fees, multiple cryptocurrencies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, NFTs, cross-chain security. I mean, there's so much here, and very often this is like a new language. With all of that wrapped up, ultimately for our audience, can you focus on kind of the IP rights, right? So given all of that as a backdrop, and let's all take a leap of faith, what are the IP rights? What do you need? What do people need to think about? And, related to NFTs and just, if you can share just a little bit about why NFTs, regardless of all the underlying tech and how it gets transferred and minted, et cetera, what are the IP rights associated with NFTs and just what's important to understand there?
Definitely. And I think this is one of the most common questions that people have about NFTs. What am I getting, with the NFT? And it's one of the things that people have the most difficulty wrapping their minds around. And so in general, if you purchase an NFT, that usually does not include any of the underlying intellectual property rights in the thing that it's associated with. So if you buy an NFT in a digital photo, you're not getting any copyright or other ownership rights in that photo by virtue of that NFT. In the same way that if you were to buy a limited edition print of that photo, that wouldn't come with any sort of copyright rights or license, and it wouldn't allow you to then take that picture and create T-shirts with the digital photo on it. That being said, just like in the real world where you could get a license to do that if you wanted to, some rights actually can be provided with the NFT, either in the platform terms, so meaning in the marketplace or other platform where you purchase the NFT, or in a smart contract that's embedded in the NFT itself. So, using that example, if the NFT is for a digital photo, the platform terms or the smart contract could provide the buyer of the NFT with the right to make X number of T-shirts or mugs or other items with the image, or to otherwise use the image commercially. But when purchasing NFTs, the purchaser should take care and make sure that no conflict exists between the platform terms and whatever terms are in that smart contract.
Excellent. So, Mark, more and more brands are starting to utilize kind of the underlying functionality of blockchain and NFTs to build unique, verifiable experiences, either moment in time or ongoing experiences that get better and better as you are part of the club. And they're tied to the ownership of a very particular NFT. So I guess, what are the benefits of NFTs and why do people, and why will brands use them more and more in the future?
Sure. And, I guess I'll start off with more generally of why people create NFTs. In addition to the perceived possibility to get rich very quickly by buying a Bored Ape or other NFT, besides that scarcity aspect, I think in general at a higher level, there are a number of benefits to NFTs that are very attractive to artists and other creative people. The first is that the NFT creates an opportunity for an additional revenue stream from a photo, image, or other asset or creative work that the NFT is associated with. So the artist can now sell, the physical painting or a physical print of a photo, as well as the NFT for the painting or the photo. There's also the ability for the creator of the NFT to receive royalties on all subsequent sales of the NFT. So before NFTs, as an example, a photographer could sell a limited edition run of a print of one of their photographs, right? And so they would obviously make money on that initial sale of those prints. But if the prints were resold, the photographer would not receive any additional revenue from those sales. However, with NFTs, a royalty can actually be embedded in the NFT through a smart contract so that every time the NFT of the picture is resold or the photo is resold, the photographer would get a percentage of that sale. There's also increased transparency in the transactions. So you can see not only what the original NFT sold for, but when, and then how much it sold for and when every time after that. And then there's just security and permanency by virtue of being on the blockchain. It's very difficult to hack or change the transaction data. And so people can have some measure of confidence that the transaction data they're seeing as far as when the things were sold and for how much is actually real. Now, moving towards IP owners, like artists and other creators, I think that NFTs provide IP owners with the opportunity to promote their IP and to also create additional revenue streams from their existing IP. So as an example, we can start with the NBA. I think the NBA really was a pioneer in this space with their Top Shot marketplace. What they're doing there is they're creating NFTs for moments in time in NBA games, among other things, like when LeBron got a basket in the finals. And so they're creating NFTs for things like that and other things that couldn't otherwise be so easily remonetized. And I think right now, Top Shot's generated over $800 million in sales or something in that range. So really, it's been extraordinarily successful. But it's not just the NBA. More and more well-known brands are getting into the NFT game. And they're doing that to, again, both promote their brands and also to generate additional revenue. So some examples right now include Snapple, they just recently dropped a collection of 5,000 NFTs that were created by well-known street artists to promote their new Element drink. Pepsi partnered with Billboard Music Awards, and what they did there was actually pretty interesting. They created NFTs live during the music awards and made them available to viewers. So they got, really much more viewer engagement than they would with just a typical broadcast. The well-known band Chainsmokers, they dropped NFTs that give fans a cut of the streaming royalties from their new album. And Budweiser, in an effort to try and promote its alcohol-free zero beer, they're releasing a collection of NFTs in partnership with Dwayne Wade. So in that series, which is called Budverse Legends, the NFTs are being sold in 3 variations for $180 each, and they each come with a virtual Dwayne Wade jersey, which is accessible in Decentraland, which is a meta world. So here, in this last example, they're really getting bang for their buck, right? They're generating revenue and they're promoting their brands.
I got to say, Mark, it's fascinating. I mean, some really amazing examples and pretty clear that kind of Web3 in general, specifically NFTs and how companies are monetizing is a phenomenal opportunity for brands and IP owners. But since this is a new world that we're rapidly moving into, kind of talk a little bit about the risks that IP owners need to understand related to NFTs and as they step into this new world.
Right. So unfortunately, I think with every great opportunity comes equally great risks. And here, maybe the risks even overshadow the opportunities. It's hard to tell at this point. We're really still in the nascent stages of this technology and its use by brand owners. I think we're seeing some pretty significant risks to IP owners, at least in the current space right now. First, we're seeing a pretty significant amount of NFT-related fraud and infringement in a variety of different forms. One of them is unauthorized NFTs. So we're seeing NFTs created that incorporate IP that the creator does not have rights to. And this is in large part because, really with blockchain and NFT technology, anybody can create an NFT incorporating whatever they want. So a digital image created by somebody else, a trademark or logo they don't own, a still or moving scene from a movie, the name and likeness of an image or a celebrity. And so, while that NFT is a digital certificate of authenticity, who's issuing that certificate, right? Do they have the rights to be able to provide that authenticity? Do you trust them? This is a huge issue. Blockchain right now is like the Wild West, and there's few of any rules in place. And so as blockchains are decentralized, there's also no centralized authority to resolve disputes over IP or really anything else for that matter. There's no UDRP, there's no TTAB, there's no court, there's no one really to complain to. So in some situations where there's a real company and an identifiable party, it may be possible to actually take action against that party using some traditional claims. So some current examples of this include some cases that are in the news right now that probably many of the viewers have heard about. Nike versus StockX and Hermes versus Metabergen. So in the Nike versus StockX case, you have a situation where StockX creates NFTs that are associated with actual pairs of collectible Nike sneakers. And those sneakers are stored in a vault operated by StockX. So what StockX does is it creates an NFT with an image of that shoe, and that NFT is the certificate of ownership of that shoe. So owners of those shoes, those collectible shoes, can now transfer ownership of the shoes simply by transferring the NFT to someone else, and the shoes remain in the vault. In the Metabergen case, Metabergen creates NFTs that are associated with digital images, and these digital images are basically images of the famous Hermes Birkin bag covered in different types of fur. So Nike and Hermes say that these NFTs are infringing their trademark rights. We'll see what the courts have to say about this. These cases are seminal cases. They really are, kind of at two ends of the spectrum for what we're going to see. And there's going to be a million gradations in between these two cases, but it's going to be interesting to see how the courts come out on this. And then another case that's in the news is Miramax versus Quentin Tarantino. And in that case, Quentin Tarantino is selling NFTs for access to a copy of his handwritten screenplay for Pulp Fiction, along with audio commentary and some sketches and other things. So here, Miramax believes this violates their rights because they own the screenplay and associated rights. But again, we're going to see what the courts have to say, and it's going to be very interesting. But I think these are some kind of fringe cases in the sense that, here, the allegedly infringing party was somewhat readily identifiable. StockX is a real company. They have offices. We know who Quentin Tarantino is. But in most cases that we're seeing, it's actually difficult or impossible to determine who created the NFT. And so while we can see every transaction that occurs on the Ethereum blockchain where most NFTs live, that transparency is limited in some very important ways. So most importantly, while you can see the address of the digital wallet that created or minted the NFT, that's just a long string of letters and numbers. There's no who is or publicly accessible database of who owns that particular digital wallet. So in some cases, with larger digital wallet providers, they have to engage in KYC, and you can theoretically obtain customer information through discovery. But for many other smaller wallet providers, and especially for those that are outside the US and used by bad actors, those wallet providers don't engage in KYC, and you're never going to be able to get any information from them. So the bad actors and the innocent infringers who create these NFTs, incorporating the third-party rights, are also listing them for sale on NFT marketplaces like OpenSea and Rarible, which are like, I guess you could view them as the Amazon or eBay for NFTs and digital collectibles. But here, we have a problem where even if the bad actors or the innocent infringers, maybe they don't know any better, even if these people don't post the NFTs on these marketplaces monitor the Ethereum blockchain for creation of NFTs, and they automatically post them on their platforms. So regardless of whether the bad actors or the innocent infringers are actively trying to sell and market these NFTs on these marketplaces, they end up on the marketplaces anyway. So another area where we're seeing a lot of issues are fake or fraudulent NFTs. So here, we're seeing NFTs that are associated with well-known brands and their IP, and these are promoted primarily on social media and fraudulent websites, and there's a number of different flavors of these schemes. So either the victim pays for the NFT and receives nothing, or maybe the victim connects its crypto wallet to the bad actor, and the bad actor drains the wallet of all its cryptocurrency and the NFT is in it. Other schemes include rug pulls, where the seller of the NFT makes all sorts of promises about the NFT in the drop. For example, how rare they are, or some additional benefits that the purchaser will get later. And then after the drop, the seller disappears and the victims are left with worthless NFTs. So, one real world case that I just worked on, in that situation, the infringers claimed to be selling NFTs that represented ownership in a virtual casino that would be set up in the Sandbox metaverse. So that virtual casino had the same name as a real world casino, and claimed to be affiliated with that real world casino, which is very well known. And so, keep in mind here that, it doesn't matter whether the IP owner actually offers NFTs. And in this case, that casino did not offer NFTs. But the bad actor created these fake NFTs, associated them with the brand of the casino, made all sorts of promises that the buyers were going to have ownership in this virtual casino, and it was all fake and made up, right? So at the end of the day, the people who bought those NFTs had absolutely nothing. And then finally, and I say finally about the things I'll talk about, but there's a million other, things that we're seeing out there, and we're going to see new ones every day. The last thing that probably a lot of people have heard about are blockchain domains. And so the blockchain domains are really just NFTs that are associated with domain names that have extensions that don't exist in the established domain name system or DNS. So your traditional domain names, which exist in the DNS, include things like .com, .net, .org, and all the new GTLDs. And also all of the country code top-level domains as well, like .us for US, .de for Germany, .ca for Canada. And for these traditional domain names, which you're all familiar with, if they're properly configured, they point to IP addresses and they resolve in internet browsers and can be used to host websites and email addresses. Now, blockchain domain names, on the other hand, only exist on the blockchain they were created in, which again, for the most part, is Ethereum now. And so there's two predominant players in this space. We have Unstoppable Domains, which offers 11 different extensions. So these include .nft, .wallet, .crypto, and .blockchain. And then there's also the Ethereum Name Service, or ENS, which offers .eth domain names. So these blockchain domains look like traditional domain names, but again, they don't exist in the real world DNS. So while they may resolve in some smaller browsers, primarily those focused on mobile devices, they're not recognized in mainstream browsers like Chrome without plugins or other software. And so since they're not associated with an IP address, they can't host websites or other applications or be used for email purposes, at least not yet. But we're starting to see this change, and there are now some hacks that can make blockchain domains point to real domains in the DNS. So right now, mostly what these blockchain domains are being used for is as an alias for a digital wallet. So you can associate the blockchain domain like brand.nft with a digital wallet. And then for the transactions that you engage in, all you have to do is remember the blockchain domain like brand.nft and not the long string that identifies the wallet. But here, this could ultimately represent a significant threat to brand owners because, if some third party has, brand.nft or brand.wallet or brand.crypto, that could create the impression that this wallet's associated with the brand owner. And so as these bad actors engage in schemes like the ones I described before, they can be facilitated using these blockchain domains attached to their wallets.
Yeah. I mean, Mark, we talked a lot about kind of blockchain and NFTs and, what about Web 2 and traditional domains and social media? So kind of difference between Web 2, Web 3, Web 3 being blockchain related, Web 2 being the world that we know today, .com and our entire internet that we know in the digital universe. So with the world moving to Web 3 and a new decentralized model, what are the threats in Web 2 that people should think through as this new world evolves?
Right. So a lot of these threats I'm talking about in Web 3 in this new world are being facilitated by things that exist in Web 2 in this current world that we live in, right? So what we're seeing is that these NFT-related domain name issues, they're not limited to blockchain domains. We're seeing actually a huge increase in registration of domain names, traditional ones like .com, which incorporate brands and the word NFT or crypto or something similar. And so, of course, these domains are being used for more traditional purposes such as, pay-per-click and referral fee abuse. But they're also being used increasingly as part of these fraudulent schemes that I just described to host, fake brand-related NFT marketplaces or to, engage in other schemes where they create the impression that they're associated with the brand. In the virtual casino scheme, which I just was talking about, the bad actors use the domain names brandcasino.io, with the brand being the actual casino, which I'm not going to name now, and brandcasinonft.com. So the first one was used to host a website where they advertised the scheme and how it worked. And the second one, brandcasinonft.com, was used to host another website where they minted the NFTs that supposedly came with ownership in its virtual casino.
Yeah, and certainly, I guess, kind of from an Appdetex perspective, we certainly see that sophisticated network. These bad actors in these communities are not just utilizing one medium. They are highly organized and have, very, very elaborate schemes for duping people and having people interact on social media and Web 2 traditional, thinking that they're actually interacting with these real brands. So, man, this new world doesn't have a lot of regulation or oversight right now. It's a little scary. But what should IP owners be doing to protect themselves and, more importantly, their customers from threats in this new world?
So there are a number of things that IP owners can do, and a lot of these things are things that they're already doing, which just need to be, I think, redirected towards this new threat slightly. One is defensive registration of brand-related blockchain domains. So I wouldn't say go crazy here and register everything because, like with traditional domain names, there's an unlimited number of combinations that the bad actors can register, right, that incorporate your brand, an NFT, or anything else. And, pretty quickly, if you start going crazy here, defensive registration provides, some diminishing returns. But go after the obvious ones, right, especially your exact brand. So, like I said, sometime later today, go look and see online, is brandnft.com available? Look for a bunch of these other permutations. See whether it's registered. If it is, see what content is up there, right? Search for your brand and NFT in Google and see what comes up. Also, in these blockchain domain names, again, don't go crazy here and register everything, but go after the obvious ones, especially your exact brand. So I mentioned Unstoppable Domains earlier, which is, one of the main providers here. What they've done is they've actually reserved domain names in their extensions that consist of words that they deem to be closely associated with well-known entities, products, or individuals. And they call these protected brands. Now, how do they choose those protected brands? Who knows, right? But it doesn't matter. If your brand's on that list, what that means is you can go to them and you can get your brand and all of their extensions, all 11, for $100, right? It's just a processing fee. Now, they do require a license to be able to say that you registered domain names in their extensions. But, even though this is off-putting to a lot of brands, personally, I wouldn't let it deter you because they could probably say that anyway on a fair use basis. But at the end of the day, this is an absolute no-brainer, right? Whether you can get your protected brands through Unstoppable Domains or whether your blockchain domains are still available in their extensions, even if they're not part of protected brands. At least get something like brand.nft or brand.blockchain or brand.wallet. This is a no-brainer because the situation that we have right now is if a third party registers or obtains a blockchain domain name before you do, there's not really any way to get that domain name back other than purchasing it from that third party. And that's assuming that they're willing to sell it. And if they are, prices tend to be highly inflated like other NFTs. And we're routinely seeing them listed for sale in the high 5 and high 6 figures. So remember, blockchain and NFTs are decentralized. There's no central authority to resolve disputes. There's no UDRP or similar process. In the US, arguably the ACPA applies, but even if you were successful in an ACPA or a trademark infringement suit, your practical remedies are pretty limited. So the court could, I guess, order transfer of that blockchain domain name, but there's no practical way to enforce it, right? Since the blockchain is decentralized, there's no way to compel a transfer. It's also possible that the court could order Unstoppable or some similar provider to burn the NFT, which doesn't eliminate the blockchain domain NFT, but makes it unusable. But we haven't seen this yet, and we don't know whether that's really a possibility. And the other thing that people can do, is again, something that they're probably already doing or should be doing, and that's monitoring, right? So the best thing that brands can do to protect themselves is to monitor for NFT-related abuse. And so this includes monitoring NFT marketplaces for NFTs incorporating their IP. So this means the mainstream players like Rarible and OpenSea. These platforms are somewhat responsive to takedown notices, but keep in mind that removing the listing does not actually eliminate the NFT from existence, right? It just removes it from that marketplace. And then I think you want to be doing traditional monitoring, right? So you want to monitor for traditional domain names, which incorporate your brand and the word NFT, and monitoring for websites and social media for uses of your brand and the word NFT. And then aggressively recovering and taking down these domain names and websites and social media accounts. And so, as I said before, I think that, everyone here should look online later. Go on Google and search for your brand and NFTs. Even if you think that you're not in this space, third parties may make people believe that you're in this space. And, manual searching is important, definitely. But, manuals can't be done at scale, right? There's no way you're going to be able to search everywhere online and search all the marketplaces and search all the social media platforms and accounts. And, here, like with traditional IP enforcement online, having a vendor, I think, really is critical. You need to be able to do this at scale. You need to have, some automated searching from a platform that has the technology to do this. You need their machine learning and AI to be able to parse out the results so that you're not looking at 5 trillion results and you're looking at the most important things. And, doing those things of the manual monitoring and utilizing a brand protection platform, really, I think is best practice in this area.
Yeah, Mark, really appreciate that on many levels. And, it's been an absolute pleasure kind of working together on kind of the future of our business and the services and solutions and platform that we provide to customers. So, to thank you for the expert guidance and knowledge that you have and real world experience helping customers in this space. So I guess in just kind of a wrap up, and we're going to move to questions here in a minute. Thank you to everyone who has put forth some questions. Please utilize the Q&A feature in this session. At Appdetex, we are kind of one of the leaders in kind of the traditional Web 2 and have a comprehensive suite and a software platform that, as Mark said, really helps detect and trace all of your threats across domains, websites, using image recognition, social media. And we're moving aggressively into kind of the Web 3 space and are working with kind of brands that want to kind of launch into Web3 and start down that path, and also Web3 pure companies that are starting from scratch and then working backwards to build a brand across traditional Web2 assets and interactions and social media platforms. The one thing that I would say to everyone out there is prepare and kind of set yourself up for success. Kind of one best practice that we see is before a brand launches NFT strategy is to, work with someone like ourselves, work with Mark, get that absolute expert guidance, because once you launch, preparing for everything, proactively getting these domains, we have a capability ourselves. We can kind of monitor, we can search, we can be ready for when you do your NFT launch or your Web3 strategy launch, your new product launch, and we can help you combat the absolute onslaught of issues that you're going to have. Doing that after the fact is going to be complete catch-up. So if there's one piece of advice that at least I give here in moderation and what I've seen personally with Mark and working with some of our customers, it really does pay to be prepared to work ahead of time with your product teams, your marketing organizations, your security folks, your in-house counsel, your outside counsel, experts like Mark, and working with a platform provider that can really give you a shot at success. So, okay, so let's move to some questions. Mark, man, we have a bunch. We kind of anticipated that, so really appreciate everyone. So let me start with the first one. How do NFTs compare with historic online transacted items? For example, special weapons or skins associated in many of the online games.
So I think for these transacted items, these special weapons or skins or these other digital assets inside these games, each of those games is really a closed system. It's a closed world, and so you can't take a weapon or a skin or something else or some other item typically from one of these games to another, right? The games are programmed differently. I mean, I guess some sort of API or other thing could be created, but currently we haven't really seen much of that. And I think what the vision is for the future of this metaverse is either one unified virtual world, or the interconnectivity of these different unified virtual worlds is that you can take items from one virtual world to another, from one area to another. And I think the way that would happen is through NFTs, right? So now you get an NFT that's associated with that item, whether it's a skin or a weapon or something else. And with that NFT, you can take that from, one game or world to another world. Right now, I think that probably couldn't happen because, as I mentioned, each NFT lives on its own blockchain, right? And so if you have these different worlds or games that are all built on the Ethereum blockchain, and Ethereum is attractive to a lot of companies because Ethereum has different layers that you can build on top of, and so you can integrate with that blockchain and create other offerings. That's how you have, like unstoppable domain names and other things. So to the extent that the different games or worlds all existed on Ethereum and used, Ethereum NFTs, theoretically you could move that NFT from one game or world to another.
Yeah, and it's really just, I think, because some of my thoughts there, we stay in NFT land and think about the chain and in-game experience, but I think where it gets really unique and interesting is combining kind of the digital world and the real world, right? So we're already seeing major apparel and major brands that are going to create in chain or, in Web3 in these kind of metaverses experiences for Mark and I to get on a private jet and go land at a place before we go and do some gambling at a casino. And we're going to get fitted for Armani suits. And because our avatars are, exact representations of our real bodies, as we, pay, those Armani suits are showing up at our door 5 days later in the real world. So I think, just challenging everyone to think through the new use cases that are coming and not just what we're staring at right now, and think about the future as it exists. It's not just going to be these digital worlds. It's going to be the interrelationship of the digital world and Web3 and the metaverse and multiverse and the real world. That's where I think everyone is really going to have to be prepared for defending their IP and proactively getting out there and making sure that you can protect it.
I think one thing that's becoming very apparent to me is that I don't live the same lifestyle that Rick does because I'm not traveling around on private jets, going to the casino first and getting fitted for Armani suits. But I would like to live that lifestyle, so Rick and I are definitely going to hang.
Nice. Well, remember that was in the metaverse. So you're gonna put on your Oculus, and we're gonna go get on a private jet in the metaverse. So yeah. So anyway, we could digress on that one for quite some time. Highly entertaining. But let's get to some of the other questions. Mark, another really good question here. Thank you very much for whoever submitted this. How do we address the question of jurisdiction in infringement cases, considering that blockchains and NFTs are essentially decentralized by nature and globally accessible?
What a fantastic question. I wish I had an answer for that question. Really, we have no idea what that's going to look like. And so for right now, I think we're not really seeing any decentralized virtual worlds, right? What we're seeing with the virtual worlds, like, Sandbox and Decentraland, is that really there is a gatekeeper. There's a company that's operating it. And so for right now, at least, there is some place that we can submit IP infringement and abuse claims to and maybe get them actioned. But, and so in that scenario, I think we can rely on our traditional IP rights and our existing trademark registrations. We're seeing a number of companies like McDonald's and others that are registering all sorts of trademarks for virtual services. I don't see the value in that personally. I think that to the extent that there's this gatekeeper, that having a registration for virtual goods or services doesn't really put you in a much better position than having one for traditional and real world goods and services as far as enforcing your rights through that centralized gatekeeper. But, once you get into a truly decentralized world, that's a very different story. Now there's no one to go to submit your IP infringement or other abuse claim to. So, IP rights become kind of meaningless in a way, right? In a truly decentralized world. And so as you're accessing these worlds, you're not accessing them often through traditional web browsers, which are based on, they use IP addresses to display content and have other functionality. So you can geo-block people and figure out where they are. Well, when you're in these virtual worlds, you're connecting through your crypto wallet. So they have no idea where you are or who you are. And so, that's one of the great questions of, how do we enforce our IP rights in the metaverse? And this is going to be a developing question.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, Mark. I think it's developing, right? I think, again, as I led up front, I think we're in kind of 1998, 1999 as it relates to the internet and what it will become. It's going to be fascinating to see how, financial markets, countries, again, jurisdictions kind of come together in this new world. Okay, let's move on to next question. So it's a good one. How can you coordinate the relations between the owner of the IP and the publisher of the NFT? The publisher will get subsequent fees, a royalty for each NFT sale, but not mandatory of the IP owner. So maybe a little bit there, Mark, if you don't mind.
That's another great question. This is one of the problems that we're seeing, and that's why we're seeing, these cases, StockX and MetaBirkin and other cases. And, there's, as I mentioned, there's nothing stopping anybody from creating NFTs based on anyone else's intellectual property. And so in some cases you have, brand owners that are creating the NFTs. And so they're like the NBA with Top Shot, right? That's their IP. They're using a third party, Dapper Labs, to help them, create and mint the NFTs and administer the platform. But, they are the IP owner and the publisher. In other situations, there may be no connection between the IP owner and the publisher of the NFT. And, again, that's why we're seeing these cases. I think now that Web3 is here, when we're looking at license agreements and licenses with third parties, we're going to have to start incorporating this type of language and addressing these issues in these licenses. And, where we say now that the licensee, cannot register domain names or apply for trademark registrations or set up social media accounts or accounts on other platforms using the trademark owner's trademark, we also want to take into account virtual worlds and NFTs and probably have some of that language in our agreements.
Excellent. All right. So this next question is one, I guess, we can address, but I read this and think about like new business opportunities. And this is, yet another example of where, we may need other people to build a service or a solution that kind of handle this. So let me ask a question. This particular person doesn't understand how you actually verify ownership of a physical painting in the real world. If the painting is sold on blockchain without using, all right, sorry, let's continue. So let's first, the two parts of the question. If the painting is sold without using blockchain, how would the painting sales be tracked? And let's just start there. So link it. I think it's you buy a painting. If I can clarify the question, buy a painting in the real world, but the artist or the gallery also mints an NFT that validates that you actually did buy that in the real world.
I mean, I think it's just like any other certificate of ownership that would exist in the real world on paper, right? You could, just like a house, you have a house, you have a title and deed to the house. I mean, you could sell that house to an unsophisticated party who didn't check the title or go through the standard process. And, would that, that's maybe not a great example because there's a lot of property laws that make that untenable and not really so enforceable. But, maybe that would be enforceable. And here, this is, this is a great question. I think this kind of goes to, I think the ultimate question here is, how do you verify the ownership or how do you verify the connection between the NFT and the physical item that it's associated with? And, this is a huge problem. This goes back to things that I was saying earlier in the discussion and, even to the last question. It is very difficult to establish that authenticity. And so, you have to rely on trusted players. And so, for example, when they sold the Beeple painting for $69 million or whatever it was, that was sold through auction, through a well-known auction house. And so there's a credibility that the auction house provides. So that's one way you can, have some measure of confidence and authenticity, but, other ways is more difficult. I know that some insurance providers and other service providers are actually getting into this space. And what they're doing is, or they're proposing to do, is to create, a registry that brand owners or IP owners can participate in, and they pay the service provider a fee, and all the authentic NFTs that are created go into that registry along with whatever associated rights there are, and the NFT purchases are insured so that somebody who purchases an NFT can verify the authenticity of that NFT in a registry. And if they buy the NFT and it's not authentic, they can make an insurance claim. I mean, that's one possible solution that we're seeing out there. There are other possible solutions, but yes, this is a huge issue of how do we verify authenticity? It's very, very difficult. And so when you go to NBA Top Shot on their marketplace, well, you can have a high level of confidence that that's authentic. When you buy an NBA related NFT on Rarible or OpenSea, not so much unless you can somehow trace it back to NBA Top Shot.
Yeah, and I think, Mari, at least what I think about here is certainly an entrepreneurial opportunity for someone to step into that, that space in between the real world and the NFT tracking through a blockchain, whatever that is. I think about kind of stock certificates or option agreements, right? So, back in the 80s, there was a physical document and you signed it and you had to have it, and that was your document. And kind of then companies like Carta and others popped up that were essentially the trackers of that asset. And then, you kind of transacted everything through that system. So again, I think this is a really unique question that is going to open up new ways to do business and new ways for companies to, start and provide a service back to this. Okay.
So I think looking at that question, so there's a second part of that question. And so the person said, to further clarify the question, the sale of the painting was originally placed in the blockchain. And so I think, in that situation, again, how do we verify the initial authenticity of that NFT? Well, let's say the painter has a website that's well known and says on the website, I'm selling this painting and I'm going to issue an NFT to I'm going to mint an NFT, and that's how I'm going to sell this painting. Well, then you have the confidence that that NFT actually does represent ownership of the painting. And then from that point on, every time that painting is sold, that transaction is going to be recorded in the blockchain. So you're not going to necessarily know who bought the painting, right? You may only have the address of their crypto wallet, but you will know when the painting was sold and for how much.
Yep. And I think what's interesting in that, Mark, maybe just on the rights. So where in the physical world where that artist, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but just in talking through this, the original artist in the real world, if they sold that painting and it's a limited number, if the original buyer decides in 10 years to go sell it, the artist probably isn't going to get any of the money back. But in the world in which an NFT would exist that is the transaction record of the physical piece, the original artist could get a royalty structure for every time that NFT is sold downstream. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. So they can embed that in the smart contract aspect of the NFT. I mean, whether they want to do that is a different question, right? That might make the painting or whatever they're selling less marketable because whoever buys it doesn't want to have to pay 15% of the transaction every single time. And so, but these are the kind of considerations, that artists have to take into account when they're minting their NFTs. Will that limit the sales? Or, is it so desirable that they want to take that risk and they want to be able to capture revenue on future transactions?
Is it 15% set, or can it be, 0.2% or 5% or 3%?
It could be anything. I mean, it could be 99%, it could be 1%, it could be any number that the minter of the NFT desires. 15% I think is probably the high end that you're going to see. More often, I think you're probably going to see 10 and 5% again, because the higher that royalty percentage, probably the less marketable that NFT is.
Got it. Okay. So let's see, pretty thought-provoking question coming in here. So recently, an entire animated television show that was under development was canceled after the lead character, which was based off of an NFT, was stolen through a phishing scam. The producer lost the commercial rights to the NFT through the scam. Would this count as theft? And is there any legal recourse for a situation like this?
I think there's more complexity here to this scenario that maybe is not captured in this question, but just going through it, I guess I'll assume that the NFT, the character in the NFT had some other commercial rights that were embedded, either in a smart contract in the NFT or maybe, in the terms of sale, either on the platform or whoever the television show person or the purchase of the NFT bought it from, right? So I'll assume that there's some other commercial rights in there that permitted the TV producer to be able to make the show using that character in NFT. Is that theft? Yeah, I mean, of course it's theft, right? It's theft in the same way if someone went into your pocket and took your wallet. What are the remedies? That's a different question, right? You can probably track where that NFT is. You can see which wallet it belongs to, but who owns that wallet? Where is that person, right? That person could be anywhere in the world. And again, because of the decentralized nature of the blockchain, it's not really possible to force a transaction on the blockchain through court order. So, could you ever get that NFT back? I don't know. If you could identify the person, and look, these people do get identified. Maybe they start selling on a platform where some of their information is available, right? So there are ways to identify these people, but it's going to be very challenging, and it's going to have some challenges that, some more traditional scenarios probably don't have.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think the tracing of the digital exhausts in Web 2 is going to be valuable in the Web 3, enforcement world for probably quite some time, because most of the communication from the millions or billions of people and humans on the planet is still through Web 2 communication and social media and websites, et cetera. So I think working with someone who can kind of trace the exhaust and find those connection points is going to be critical. So Mark, I guess in wrapping up here, naturally, as an expert in the field, maybe some closing thoughts from yourself on the session and based on some of the questions. Let me open it up to you.
I mean, I know there's a huge amount of information that we shared in this session, and some people's brains might be hurting right now. So I think it's likely that people will have a lot of questions afterwards. Definitely feel free to contact myself or Rick later. But I guess, what I would say is it's important to understand this technology and how it works. That's the only way that you're going to see what the opportunities are for promoting your brands and also what the risks are. And so, what I'm trying to do now is just evangelize this and just share the knowledge. And, hopefully everyone who's here who watched this has a better understanding of how this works and can now start sharing that knowledge inside their own companies so that they can start having some more meaningful conversations to be able to take advantage of these opportunities and also to be able to see and stop some of these threats that probably exist right now.
Well, thanks, Mark. Really appreciate it. Like I said, our partnership is just beginning, and really excited about the world of Web3 as we move forward. Muriel, let me hand it back over to you. Really appreciate the time today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick and Mark, for those really thought-provoking insights into such a fascinating and fast-moving space. I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. But unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there because we're out of time. And now it's over to Pete, who will be introducing a session on domain name management, addressing corporate attorneys' challenges. Hope you enjoy the rest of today's conference. Bye.